Now we're going to do passport. Passport. Look at this guy. Isn't he happy? No more mustache, which tells me that I must have gotten a straight job. Because you can tell when I'm doing a little artistic creative stuff by my facial hair. When I'm doing my spirit walks, my wandering, my drawing, my reading, my couple months of reading solitude. I read like a couple hundred books in my lifetime. You do that by reading, a book every couple days at certain times. I try to, even when I'm working, read like a book a week, at least like a couple dozen books a year. But there's a time when I first did real estate, I didn't read much at all. But I got back into that. That last year, 2017, I knocked out a whole bunch of autobiographies, business books. I was like putting on my money hat, and I was like, all right, if I'm gonna make, my million, let me figure out, I've always heard from people who did MBAs that unless you're gonna network, they're pretty useless. You grab the knowledge out there. So I was like, what knowledge is out there for business wisdom, the latest info? So I went on a binge of business type stuff lately, but back in the day it was mostly politics. Picking up, and now also when I did that Vampires in Iraq recently, I realized how much I still want to get into. That really started back up a fire. That's what all of this is, little breadcrumbs to remind me who I am as I come home to myself. By the end of these videos, I feel like I will have come home to myself. And they're also little coals that kept the fire burning. So all those notes kept the fire burning for a couple really cool art projects I think are in those notes, and then also some life's work. That if that's one of the biggest injustices, if not the biggest injustice in our generation, then I'm going to speak on it. So I'm getting riled up. I think one of those last videos I started like getting really emotional and talking into the camera about General Mattis. What was that all about? I'm going to have to speak on that. I'm going to have to see by the end of these videos if I could stand by all the words that have come out of my mouth. And if you can do that, then you can hold other people accountable. And I think that is the most noble path to walk, is you have a word, and then you are responsible for your actions, and then you get to hold other people accountable for theirs. So that's not what this guy believes that back then in like July 23rd, 2007, but he has a lot of blind spots that he's still trying to cover. So what is this guy? Let's look at this guy in this passport day. David Allen McNerney. Took this picture in Redlands. So I was back at home. I was probably doing the insurance thing with my folks. I'm going to go through and check all my emails. My emails started when I jumped over to Gmail. It was like 2003 or 4. So by then I have an email trail. So when I dig into my autobio narrative in depth, I'm going to be able to piece together some of this stuff. Some of this might have happened a little bit before or after when I think. But I know by the haircut and by that picture, I remember that shirt too. I bought that shirt when I was in Santa Cruz, when I was up north. But I took that picture in Redlands when I was down south. So I was working with my folks whenever I'm down south. I didn't, after a couple of jobs right out of the Army, whenever I was down here in Southern California, I was working for my folks. I made them some decent money. Didn't stay there enough to actually turn around their agency or set them on their own feet. But some of the accounts I brought in have been paying them to this day. One in specific has easily paid them over a couple $100,000 since I left them. So I know I didn't right by them just by every now and then putting some effort into their business. That account, that gets them like $20,000-$30,000 a year. I got that out of the phone book. So you want to talk about that kid who's on the phone just calling? When I was one of these little, like, it seems like this is how I determine truth in my life, is I just run. My mom calls me microwave. She's like, everything happens so fast for you, slow, you don't have to be like a microwave, just in a minute. But I'd be like, all right, I'm an artist, move to Santa Cruz, I'm going to create this great work of art. And I'm like, don't have the inspiration, don't have the life experience, and I'm like, all right, so then I get a sales job. I'm like, I'm a sales person doing consumer lending with HSC, and after 3 months. And then also sometimes because I'm doing that sales job, but then I remember in Santa Cruz, I went to a bar and like people were like, what do you do? And I'm talking to these college girls. UCSC, UC Santa Cruz is a very liberal arts hippie college. So I'm like such a square with the sales job, and this girl's like totally not impressed. And I bought her like I'm trying to be chivalrous, like trying to figure out how to interact with girls. I'm like, give them stuff. Girls love stuff. I'll just keep buying them drinks. It's not really humor, charisma, personality goes a lot further than just buying girls shit. That might, it's nice to be chivalrous and break the ice, and if you can pick up the tab, great. But if that's the only card you're playing, you're not gonna. So I'm like, just keep buying her drinks, and they just kept taking the drinks, and I was like, I need more of a personality here. So that's what I would quit these jobs because I would like run all the way one way, and I'd be like, I'm not really attracting the type of girl I want. And then in the back of my mind, I have Addie, the addict, and she's the artist. She plays music and she's into drugs and she's cool. Her boyfriend is in a band and they're trying to get picked up in the Inland Empire. They're trying to be the next. Where are they trying to be the next? Who are they trying to be? They said they were like, not Alien Ant Farm, but something like that. Like if you think about these, not emo, alternative rock, Inland Empire bands, like Green Day. It's like it wasn't Green Day. It was a different style of music, but like alternative rock, Inland Empire bands. The Inland Empire is a feeder for LA music scene, just like Jersey, Long Island bands. I think the Fugees are from Jersey. Wu-Tang Clan is from Staten Island. If you're on the outskirts of a major metropolitan city, Houston or like some of these Chicago, then you're a feeder for their music scene within that city. And so she was dating a guy in a band who they had gig money and they had tour money, so they were getting a little bit of label promotion, but they weren't really breaking. And obviously, I don't know if they were doing the drugs she was, but that was the scene that they were in. And I'm selling stuff, and so I was like, oh well, I'm too much of a dork, and then I quit. And I never really wanted to be the drug guy, but I was like, all right, I'm gonna be like the artist. So then the facial hair grows out, and I'm like writing, reading, and I'm like, oh, this is too much. Like, fuck the word. This is like no one's speaking on this. It's overwhelming. Like my projects start, and then they would just mushroom out and just like overwhelm me. So I'm like, all right, this is gonna drive me crazy, and then shelve it, but save it. Luckily, I saved it because when I was in school too, I was like, all right, one day I'm gonna be able to make sense of all this. And if I look at my projects, next one I start later on in life gets a little bit more complete. And this is the time in my life I give myself the whole year to be like, well, let's see what I come up with by the end of the year. So I'm being a lot more patient now. Well, I've sacrificed a lot more too. I've sacrificed what I feel was $1 million company, a real estate company in order to do this. So better, but it's just keep upping the stakes and keep understanding more and more about how my creative side works. But back then, I'm just like, sprint one direction, look around, what the fuck's going on? All right, am I getting what I want out of life? No, and then turn a different direction, sprint. It's a good way to check what's right, because when people say, oh, you should do this, I'm like, I tried that. I tried the military. So I'm trying the straight approach in this. I can tell by my haircut, passport. I think I want to travel, and that's why I got the passport. I want to see the world. I'm like, let me get a passport just in case everything's impulsive, just in case I decide to jump on a plane. I think at that time I was applying for there was a nonprofit in Nicaragua. You could go down there and help children on the beach. There was they had a female health clinic, and you could go down there and volunteer there, and then you get help with the female health clinic in the village, and then there was a children's center, and they were on the beach. And I always loved the beach, and I always loved nature. So I was thinking about going to Latin America. Also, I felt like I had to peek through that door of my Latin history. So my mom is Mexican, my dad is white. My mom's from Guadalajara, Mexico, which is a town, second largest town in Mexico. It's south of Mexico City. I think actually Los Angeles, if it was a part of Mexico, would be the second largest town. So other than Mexico City, Los Angeles has the largest concentration of Mexicans, and then Guadalajara would be third, or something like that. I just destroyed that statistic, but there's some sort of statistic that Los Angeles, if it was in Mexico, would be the second largest city. But Guadalajara is very populous. That's where my mom's from. Eventually I made my way down there, but I think that's one of the reasons why I got the passport. I was thinking about it. And my dad, he is not just generic white, but he's half Irish, and then maybe half Jewish. Grandma was non-practicing. She stopped practicing after they moved over here because there's a lot of anti-Semitism, especially in Southern California, especially in Hollywood, around World War II. We only said the Jews were cool after Hitler killed so many. But before, it was a dirty secret that it was okay to hate Jews. And my family's living proof. They were like, this isn't worth it. And so a lot of families willingly stopped with that culture. And what does that mean, to deny your heritage and your narrative? What does it mean when your narrative, your personal narrative that goes back your generations, no longer has a place in the cultural narrative? This is something I care a lot about, because America does not claim its responsibility for its empire and all of its colonies and all the violence and destruction it creates. So now you have the children of that empire who come to the imperial center, just like Frantz Fanon talked about, Wretched of the Earth. You can look it up, but like there's this pattern of colonization and empire of your mind, but also of population movement. This is something I pieced together on my own too when I was reading in that class UC on the Bomb, about how the UC system, in Berkeley specifically, and then Stanford was a contemporary of Berkeley, but it was a private university. And Berkeley, and that's why they've always had a rivalry. They were both set up around the same time with similar missions in order to train the young imperialists, the young future imperialists, to go and conquer, let me go this way, go and conquer the Orient. Because we just got the Philippines, and now we had to go and pacify those people. We had to train our engineers for the civil works, and and we had to bring civilization to the savage. We're repeating the same patterns as history is wont to do, unless you correct it. Only we don't have the same excuses, and so we have new excuses. And racism is a pretty damn good excuse. It's a pretty good catch-all. You could defend it through religion, and through science, eugenics. Right now, we're ignoring the fact that we're replicating the violent patterns of empire, and maybe those excuses are subconscious. Maybe that's why racism and cultural ethnocentrism bubble up to the surface, because really they're the unspoken justification. But also, if you have no justification, and well, I don't have to explain it too much, and I don't have to guess too much. When you separate cause and effect, and you have things going on, and you're not explaining to people, and you're actually stopping people from figuring out how A leads to B, then their own ignorance is going to fill in the gaps. And that's exactly how superstitions form. And that's why I think we have a lot of ignorance in our discourse, because we are purposefully being kept from what's going on in Iraq and Afghanistan and what these historical patterns are. And that's also how I heal myself, is when you plug into the historic patterns, you're able to connect the dots, and you're able to have a more holistic, more explanatory view of the world. Just my view of reality makes more sense than what I've been given, or than most people I talk to. But it's because it's also, it's earned firsthand, not in a college. Like, I read books, I don't just listen to professors. I had a professor in community college, and that's why I stopped going there, who was trying to defend the freedom fighters in Colombia. I haven't really looked into it that much, but I just felt like it was dogmatic by his approach. I had a professor in UC on the Bomb, where I was trying to bring up foreign affairs, because I had subscriptions to these magazines, because growing up in a conservative Christian household, I was going to get the conservative side as well as like the UC side. And so he's talking about how, like, we're a part of the military-industrial complex. And I bring up, well, most recently, in foreign affairs, they're criticizing the Bush administration. And what I was going to bring up is that conservatives themselves are criticizing the execution of the war. Because those conservatives probably are like, they are imperialist and they are pro-American empire, but they're noticing that Bush isn't even executing that right. Because really this is all cronyism, and he's, the man is inept. When you get down to it, but it's just also I disagree with his values. I disagree with the reasons why I went into the war, but then I also disagree as, someone who's interested in military history, that even if you were trying to create an empire, this isn't how you do it. You're just creating like a reason for us to stay there, which is, empires respect, I would think that they respect their soldiers. I'd have to look into that. In Roman times and these other empires, well, I know Genghis Khan didn't. He couldn't play like that. It's the people I respect in military history, even if you disagree with their campaigns and their values, is that they had the loyalty and respect of their men because they did right by them. And that's what we're not doing. We're not doing right by our soldiers. So even if you agree with this idea of the American empire and that we should go and conquer the world, we're fucking over the people who serve and die and are on the front lines of that. So I was trying to bring that up in this You See on the Bomb, just that like even foreign affairs, even these conservative articles are criticizing Bush. And the teacher stopped me. He was like, I haven't read foreign affairs in years, son. And it was just so condescending and so like, I had that happen a couple times in school, which just totally turned me off to the whole concept of school. And now I'm starting to realize that it's just, there's the same authoritarian mind state that's on the right exists on the left. It's just on the right. They do it through religion, subservience, conservatism, traditional values. Even if it's not religion, it's this old halcyon thinking of how we do things. You know, just this this fondness for the past. But on the left, they very authoritarian people who just, they turn science into a religion and formalism. And science is constant discovery and exploration, but they act like just because you have this one discovery, we're going to worship that. We're not going to question it. And you find this over and over again. Dogma. Science can be just as dogmatic as a religion if you don't remember the scientific method and you don't abide by it. And the Democratic Party can just, well, we've seen that, how Hillary Clinton cheated Bernie out of the nomination. And then the defense on both sides is that, well, the means justify the ends. You have to sacrifice your values because they are going to get in power and they're going to come after, they're going to endanger you. So both sides motivate through fear, and both sides try to lower the discourse to a more animalistic tone. And I was starting to get the sense of that in these college courses when that teacher totally discounted what I was saying out of hand because I was quoting foreign affairs. It's like, you're not gathering information from both sides? Well, he said, I haven't read that in years, and everyone just like, and they moved on the discussion. And I think that was one of the last days I went. I was like, just like the military, as soon as I lose respect for a person or an institution, my commander, as soon as I was starting to just sense that he was a bullshit person, I was like, I'm out of here. I just check out mentally, and then it's just my body's there, but I'm already gone. Same with high school, I stopped going. So luckily I was just auditing that class, I wasn't paying for it anyway, so I was just like, yeah, these guys are idiots. Or like in community college, that guy was like a very dogmatic professor, turned me off. So then, at this passport time, I think I was saying, all right, time to make my millions. Always trying to make my millions. Get into a multi-level marketing scheme or something, blah, blah, blah. I was definitely not being the artist. And then if you want to know my anti-authoritarian streak, my probing authorities is that supposedly you're not supposed to be able to smile in your passport photos, but I'm smiling here. I'm not only smiling, I'm doing a goofy little smile. Because I was like, I'm just being a smart ass, and they let me keep the picture. I don't think they're supposed to. And you figure, if you're ever stopped or if you're traveling and you have a goofy picture on your passport, might help you out of a jam someday. I'll have to take a new one now. But this one's pretty good. I like this one. Yeah, that's enough on the picture.